Hello everybody and welcome to another episode of Matters Go. Today I want to talk about something that, funnily enough, sort of has something to do with the last video about the US election. See, while that was going on and pretty much everyone in the world was distracted by that, including us here in Australia to a very big extent, in our parliament they were passing, or not passing, but discussing, and it's looking like it's going to get passed, a bill that is called the Misinformation Disinformation Bill. Now, basically, from what I understand, because this bill is very broad, but basically anything that is considered misinformation, disinformation by the government could come under legal prosecution and could, incur legal ramifications. And it's all deemed by the government, by the way. And who's exempt from this bill? The mainstream media and the government themselves. And the government recently, we've even seen, has been giving very large donations to these mainstream media corporations and whatnot. And in fact, one of our mainstream sources is government funded. So basically, the government is going to deem what is and isn't misinformation, disinformation on the internet. And if they feel that you are spreading any of that, you will come under legal ramifications. And you're probably wondering, how would you even go about enforcing this? How would you know? Couldn't people just be anonymous or just post the anonymous kind of opinion or whatever? Well, you're going to have to use a digital ID to use social media at some point here in Australia, apparently. From what I understand, I'm really hoping none of this goes through, because in all honesty, that would probably mean the end of me using this channel. Like, I am not going to put opinion pieces up, and even though I state in my description there's no script, and there's a lot of references to me just speaking an opinion, willing to be talked to, willing to discuss, willing to even change my opinions, I could still come under legal ramifications if justified by the government. And we've even seen with a popular YouTuber here in Australia, Friendly Geordies, who's a political commentator, who a couple years back did a bunch of pieces talking about the corruption with the New South Wales government, and particularly John Barilaro. And not only did John Barilaro take, legal course against him, which to some extent you could sort of expect, but it is a little weird, our terrorist task force was sent after his producer. Like, I don't know what's happening here in Australia. I don't know why this is happening. We've usually been a very laid-back country. It's kind of our national identity. But recently, over the last 5 years or so, we've seen some pretty crazy control by the government. Like, a lot of Americans talk about living in a deep state, but we're seeing, like, really blatant signs of a potential deep state, or basically a nanny society. We also have another bill that's passing, and will probably take effect over the next year or so, and that's a ban on social media for anyone under the age of 16. And again, how are you going to enforce that and even know and be sure and make sure it's correct? The digital ID. Another thing that's a little bit scary about this whole digital ID, apart from all this stuff with these bills, potentially hurting free speech here in Australia, but there's also the fact that digital IDs are online, they're on computers. And one thing that computers, even though I love computers and we use them all the time and they're very great, they're not always the best at keeping your data safe. And even one of our government websites, MyGov, which would probably be the easiest way in this country to make a digital ID, has had data breaches in the past. So telling everyone to use your devices and to use social media and to maybe even spread your opinion, you will have to use this thing that could potentially have all your information, your ID, because this can even replace your driver's license and even your passport. It could all get taken, and your identity could be completely taken. It isn't completely reasonable to say there would be scenarios where people would sign up for this ID, and by some horrible mistake or whatever, or some lapse in some sort of code or whatever, a hacker gets in and takes this person's ID essentially and can basically just steal their identity. Is just insane. Usually in this country we've had like the option to use digital ID, which is fine. I guess, using it for your license or something is horribly convenient and stuff. And for certain things, if you opt to do it that way, that's fine. If you want to do it that way, you should have the choice to do it that way. But to make it a part of just using your computer or going online is kind of crazy when you really think about it. And then there's also the other scary factor to this digital ID thing is the digital ID is something they use in countries that have social credit scores, which basically once you've got this ID, a CCTV camera could like analyze your facial features and whatnot via facial recognition or something, and then notice you everywhere you go and track the things you do and give you some sort of score as to what things you can do according to this credit score. Apparently the way it works is like if you buy alcohol, that can affect it and bring the points down, and now there's certain things that you won't be able to do because of your social credit score. It's a complete dictatorship thing. I mean, let's be honest about it, because there is a lot of advantages to technology, and they're really the only element that makes technology bad is people. It's only when people get involved with technology and you put people in control of the technology and you let them come up with their ideas and which ways to implement it and use it, that's where technology gets dangerous. It's only dangerous due to humans. The internet itself, there is absolutely nothing wrong with it. It's what people do on it and with it that is the problem. And this whole idea that like the government needs to step in and like kind of police everyone in what they're doing, or even override parents' ability to let their children not or use or whatever the social media, because I'm sure, yes, there's a lot of instances where parents are, and it's on the parents' side, so it should be the parents you're going after, not the internet itself, who have been neglectful and let their kids use the internet in such a way that has been detrimental to their mental health, safety, and whatnot. I'm that should be looked into, and we already have task force that like keep an eye on those things in the background on the internet, and that's worked. It's not going to catch every single one, and this idea that they're using one kid's suicide in South Australia to sort of justify this to the public, and that they're eating it up without looking deeper into it to its further like ramifications and how it can be used is kind of alarming. It's a bit of a scary time, and that's why it could be the end of this channel, because I don't know, the whole idea of having a digital ID and it sort of being enforced, because at this time they're really just using technology as a way to get people onto it and lure them into it. But the fact that the internet now is a part of our everyday lives, it's not much of a transition to get to that social credit score system. I mean, that's only another bit of legislation away. And the fact that a lot of people aren't aware of this and were so distracted by the American election was somewhat understandable, but also very disappointing, because not to be weird or anything, but it's really important to focus on things that affect you at certain times. The US election, we were going to find out the result even if we didn't pay attention. We were going to get the highlights and hear about it for the next 2 months anyway, because our mainstream media, if we need to hear that, will constantly have that on a loop because America's their favorite topic. And to an extent that's the whole world and all that, but whatever, that's besides the point. The fact that they used that election as a way to just basically override what was going on in Parliament, something that could really affect Australian people, and I do say that could mean the end of this channel, because look, I'm staying optimistic and hoping that maybe this bill and legislation, as concerning as it is, will either be repealed or revised or looked into, or to be made better for citizens. I don't know, it's just crazy times here in Australia as it is around the world. I would like to also go into, because the US election is still very relevant, I don't think Trump, even though I don't agree with some of his ideals and I don't agree with everything he says all the time, and he is like sort of crazy and all that, I think there is some good that he is going to do. I believe that. And I've heard a lot of people say that the whole Roe versus Wade law legislation they have in America is like the main reason they don't like him. But apparently, from what I've heard, that's done state to state. Like the president can advise on that, but he can't actually just fully implement shit like that. It's not how that whole system works. There's a lot more to it. It is a state to state thing. but he can make federal laws and other things like that. That some of those that he's come up with are a bit crazy, but there are some, if you really look at it, are actually beneficial. Like, I know a lot of people are very upset because he recently did a video where he talked about there's only going to be two genders, freaking no puberty blockers or hormone treatments for the children. And look, the whole two genders thing was a little bit of a jab. I can't deny that. He's having a bit of a jab there. But the main meat of what he was saying is something that, I'm going to be honest, I have no problems with people being, transsexual or fucking whatever you call it, the trans people or any of that. If you're an adult and you've got to a point in your life where you've matured enough and you've aged enough and had enough of life experience, like, yes, I need to do this for myself as an adult. I know what's going on. I know how I feel. I need to change this thing about myself. You go and do that. You've grown, you've matured, you've ruminated on it, you've really thought. Because at the end of the day, we can't just gloss over this whole thing like it's just a little thing that we don't really need to think about. You just go with it. Because it's a very complex thing. Like, people aren't taking the sort of brevity that you need with such a decision, and to have children be constantly told about it and then told they can change their identity at any time is a little bit concerning. Because, like, the way I grew up in my household, I don't think gender was even a thing. Like, the things I was expected to do, my sisters were expected to do as well. Like, it wasn't like, oh, that's too heavy for, like, you're that guy, you're those guys, like, you're all equals, you're family. It was as simple as that. We didn't really stress so much on these gender roles and all that. So there's that element that's concerning. But also, children, unless, I feel, unless they're told all the time about it and how to put in their face, I don't think any child is just out of the blue going to say, I feel like I'm in the wrong body, in a serious way. Kids say crazy things. My little niece will say the most absurd things all the time. She says things like, oh yeah, poo is yummy, because she's a kid and kids are silly and they find that funny. And I'm not trying to say that there are no children who feel like they're, maybe in the wrong body for their gender and all that, but I think that's something they should ruminate on and should be, free to talk about with their family if they're serious about it. And maybe when they become an adult, they go, you know what, I've been living like this and I really need to do this, and I'm an adult now and I'm mature and I'm ready to make this decision. Boom, go ahead and do it. And his idea that you shouldn't be doing this to children, I sort of agree with that, because I think you're not taking the brevity that comes with such a decision. And there's a sort of no nonsense approach to Donald Trump in that way. He doesn't always say the things you want to hear, but the things he believes he says without, like, pussyfooting around it. He just fucking says it, and you might not like it, but I think it's great that he's allowed to say it. That's one thing about America I can't fault at all. The freedom of speech thing, whether you like what someone's saying or not, it's a really fucking great thing. Like, it's really great. And the fact that potentially we could be, to an extent, losing that here in Australia is really fucking really shit, because it's one of the things that I've liked about this country the most, is that Australian people are the types who say their opinions, and you won't always like what they're saying. Yeah, we're brash with it a bit, but we're also, if we're intelligent enough, willing to talk and willing to listen and willing to share ideas. And that's very important as well. Freedom of speech, like I said, you're not always going to like it, is really important, because when you only have one narrative, it's very easy for someone to get control of the narrative and steer it whatever way they like, which is essentially what they did in fucking Germany in the fucking 1930s and 40s. That's how he got into power. It was by controlling the narrative and having one narrative that everyone followed. It's a dictatorship. That's what it is. Everyone should be free to have their opinions and discuss their opinions and learn from each other, because we all go in one direction. We're not really progressing. You need opposing views. It's how the universe works. There's always a positive and a negative, and you put them together and energy is created, and there you go, you have life. So it is very important. Anyway, shit, rambled on for a bit now, and it's just, fuck, man, this shit's fucking, it's concerning, man. I can't lie, it's pretty concerning. It's the first time in my life, like, this is probably the most unintentionally researched episode I've ever done of this, because it's friggin' concerning. It does open your mind a bit when these sort of fundamental things that you've just had your whole life and enjoyed sort of get threatened in a way. Really puts the guard up, and it really makes you open minded. It's opening my mind and at the same time as being slightly concerning. So in case I are unable to make another video, I'll just have to say this for now. Thank you for watching Mad as a Goat. It's been 12 years of friggin' a guy just sharing his opinions. And feel free to drop a comment if you want to drop some knowledge on me, and let's share some ideas, because that's what Mad as a Goat is all about. It's an idiot with a camera sharing an idea. I don't know. Just let the people speak. That's all I'm saying. Fuck.